Hi, I recently saw a video on the internet where the person was talking about how we as people get about 90% of everything that we want. Our problem is we are far too busy focusing on the 10% that we don't get. Hi, I'm Diana Papilli. This is day 66 of 100 days of video. Today I'd like to talk about blame and responsibility. So I think that's interesting that we spend so much of our time focusing on the 10% that we don't get. And what we do is we magnify it in enormous quantities in our mind. And we fail to see 90% of our blessings and all the things that we get that we do want. So this past weekend, my sisters asked me to help with writing my mom's eulogy. We're getting ready to have her service on Saturday the 1st, and they wanted me to, they like the way I write, and so they wanted me to kind of rework some things that they put together. So I've had a lot of opportunity to really reflect this weekend on my mom and her life. Oh my gosh, what a remarkable life she had. And I am so blessed to have had her as my mom. Now, if you were to ask me in my teens, or if you were to ask me in my early 20s, if I were blessed to have her be my mom, I wouldn't quite have reacted the same way. No, I didn't hate my mother or anything like that. But as is often the case with teenagers who are in the process of breaking away from their parents, I was somewhat angry with my mom and blamed her for some of my problems. Not so much in my teens, that was just rebellious. And I was not only rebellious against my mom, but against my father. But when I got into my early 20s and I went into college and I realized that life wasn't exactly the way that it was in our house, that the rest of the world lived differently, because everybody lives differently from the way we live in our houses when we are growing up. For a while I was angry with my parents, both mom and dad, mostly with mom though, because she's mom, and we seem to be, a lot of times we seem to be more angry with our moms than our dads, although I know some people are angry with their dads too. And I had my share of that as well. So in my early 20s, when I knew everything, I knew just only a little bit more than I knew in my teens, which of course then I knew everything. And then, couple in a formal education and just enough to be dangerous, I knew everything, plus I was educated. And therefore, mom and dad were at fault for just about everything. Now, here's the truth. Mom made mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. And no, she wasn't a perfect mother. And I would never claim for her to be a perfect mother. But when I got into my 30s, I was 31 when I had my daughter. And I realized and understood a whole lot more. Here's the truth. And this is the truth of most parents, maybe not all, but of most parents. They do the best that they can. And for the most part, what they do is out of love. I know about a week or so ago, I shared that hurt people will hurt people. And sometimes people are not able to not hurt people because they don't know anything else. And so if our parents hurt us, or if we hurt our children, it's only because if we had known better, we would have done better. And maybe ourselves, maybe we were hurting. Same thing with our parents. I look back now and I realize my parents loved me very much. They loved all of us children very much. And yes, they made mistakes, but they did their best. And what they did from love, and they did with the sense of doing what was best for us. Now that my daughter is grown and she has her own daughter, I've now lived long enough for me to look back on my life. I've learned a few things, and I realize I made mistakes with my daughter. And had I known at the time, I would have done things differently. I think that's the beauty of being grandparents. We get to focus on what's really important. And I'm not just talking about spoiling our grandchildren, but children need love and acceptance and encouragement more than they need anything else. Yes, they need a healthy dose of discipline, but I think that sometimes, at least my parents, and I know I as a parent, disciplined my daughter, and they disciplined us probably more than we needed discipline, and we probably needed more love and acceptance. Again, it doesn't matter, because in the long run, I know that I had the love and acceptance, and that's all that really counts. So I was really, really grateful this weekend to focus on that 90% of my mom that was absolutely amazing and incredible. You know, the nice thing about all of us, sometimes we don't realize we make mistakes. We eventually live long enough to learn that we made mistakes and that regret them, and eventually we do better. Well, you know, my mom was totally awesome. And now that I look back, when I was in my 20s, it was easier to blame her and Dad for the mistakes they made rather than just face the responsibility, my responsibility of doing something about it. You know, eventually we have to stop blaming and just take responsibility for our reactions. Here's what I've learned in my years on this planet. That if I have a problem, I am part of that problem. But the good news is, every problem that I have comes gift wrapped with the solution inside. Many, many times, more often than not, the solution has 100% to do with my attitude, my failure to accept what I have no control over, and my failure to take responsibility for the things I do have control over, which is my reaction, my response, and how I want to form an attitude about the situation. So I sat and looked at like I said earlier, I sat and looked at the 90% of the things that my mom did. And here's what I realized as I was describing in her eulogy some of her attributes and some of her strengths. I realized that she taught some of those things to me. And I am so grateful for that. And I also realized I wish I could be more like her in many ways. I wish I had her strength and her determination, and somehow all the things that I was so angry about when I was younger were just so irrelevant, and they had much to do with my reaction and my attitude. And now that my attitude has changed and I have taken responsibility and looked at the solutions and changed my attitude and looked at my part of the problem and worked on correcting that, I was really able to understand the blessings, the many, many blessings that my parents gave me, at the point where I also understand that the mistakes they made were blessings too. You see, the universe and our higher power doesn't do these things to us. Our higher power allows these things to happen for us, for our growth, for our experience, for our awakening, and for our self-reflection and the ability to change our attitude. So, if we're blaming somebody in our lives, if we're going, oh, I have this problem and everything would be so much better if this person didn't or did or blah, blah, blah. Or somehow, if this person changed, or if this situation changed, or yeah, blah, blah, blah. If that's what we're thinking, then I most cordially and respectfully invite you to stop thinking that way and take a look at how you can change your attitude. Remember, take a look at all the things that you have control over. You have no control over anybody else. My mom used to say, you can't make anybody love you. No matter how hard you try, Diana, you cannot make anybody love you. Either they're going to love you of their own volition or they aren't, and you can't control that. So the important thing is to learn to love yourself, and that way their not loving you will not leave a hole in your life. It took a long time for me to learn how to love myself. Much study, much appreciation, much prayer, and much inner work. But once I learned to love myself, it wasn't so important to have other people love me. And it was then that I realized that I truly could love others and I could accept love. So stop blaming others. Take responsibility for yourself. Take responsibility for reactions. Take responsibility for your attitude. And stop looking at the 10% of what you don't have. Stop looking at the 10% of the shadow side of somebody or the 10% of their faults. And start looking at the 90% of the beautiful things that they have to offer you. I am so grateful that before my parents left this world, I was able to look at that 90%. They gave me so much, and I truly am grateful. Thank you for watching. I'm okay. Yes, I know I'm choking up. I'm really okay. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.